Hello peeps, it's good to see you all. I thought I'd take a moment to outline the Critical Policy Analysis Brief for HSP406. Now, as per usual, I'm using a set of slides to record this video and you can find them above the video. Most importantly, on the first slide, you can see I've got these daggy little graphics which kind of summarise what you need to do. Number one, you need to find a strategic policy, practice, strategy, that sort of stuff. Doesn't necessarily have to be VicPol focused. It's any sort of policy or practice which influences your work role. And I think that just gives you a little bit more breadth to work with if you need to. The second thing you need to do then is learn more, read more, find more about the policy itself, right? Get online. Why is it there? What was its purpose? Was there a particular event that led to its inception? All of that sort of stuff. Get to know your policy a bit better and have a read of it. Then after you've done that, you'll need to find research to support your points. A critical analysis is about looking at the policy, looking at the research base and seeing whether or not it weighs up. Sometimes it does, and you find that the policy is really well supported in the research. Other times, it's totally not the case. So once you've done that, of course, you just type up your response. Pretty easy stuff. This is the second of your UTAS submitted assessments for HSP 406. Remembering that the other three assessment tasks, the engagement preparation, the engagement presentation, and the engagement exercise are all what we call hurdle tasks, which means they don't need to be assessed by the university. But most importantly, they do actually need to be passed by the students, or you can't pass the actual unit itself. So the critical policy analysis brief is 2,000 word maximum, excluding your reference list as usual. The due date is on the Milo site for you, and it's weighted at 50% of your overall grade for the unit. What you need to do is write a 2,000 word brief that analyses a specific strategic policy. So police organisations are always involved in policies, as are any other public service organisation. They'll develop and promote policies and strategies that address different forms of issues for the public and for the police. So they're often developed out of a set of circumstances, which is why I say do a bit more research, hunt that stuff down so that you've got that background context, because it is part of the set task that you need to address. So using the format of a brief, and I actually have got a template for you that you can use. Your commander requests that you critically analyse the strategic Victoria Police policy of your choice. So as I said, it can be outside VicPol if it does influence your role. Using a critical thinking framework and a SWOT analysis, which is strength, weakness, opportunity, threat, which I'm sure you're all aware of. You need to make an argument for maintaining or discarding or revising the policy. So you must draw on your research evidence base to help support the points that you make. And as such, you will need to cite current scholarly literature around that particular area. Now, it's not research that it's about that policy itself. There could be research about the broader issue that you're focused on. For example, you might be focused on the National Youth Policing Model, and there might not be any research which analyses that policing model, but there might be a whole bunch of other research that analyses different policing strategies and models around the world. That's the stuff that you can use. Most importantly, there's a heap of research on how we should police young people, which is what you should also draw on if that's the case. So that's what I mean by drawing on literature. It can be national or international research literature. Some research of government reports and websites may be necessary for that background context stuff. And of course, you may be lucky enough to find critiques of the actual policy itself, but that's probably highly doubtful. So here's what you need to do. You choose your policy, think careful about how strategic it is for you and your role. Read your document or your web page or whatever it is that it's based on. It might be useful to find that context stuff around the policy from the news, political speeches, anything like that you can find. When was it implemented and for what purpose, most importantly? Then you go to the databases and you find articles about the main issues that you've identified in the policy. What are the main assumptions? What's your main strength? What's the main weakness? And you need to find research that supports that and weigh it up and say, well, this is the main strength. The research, however, doesn't support that. The research says blah. Then after you do that, you need to write it up as a brief, critically challenging the ideas in the policy using scholarly literature. Most importantly, write this one down, folks. Critically challenging does not mean necessarily negative, being negative, right? Critically is about seeing whether or not it weighs up against the research evidence-based. So if you've got a policy that's focusing on the policing of young people, and then you read the research about the policing of young people, and you can see that the policy reflects what the research is talking about, then that's a critical analysis too. So it can mean highlighting how the policy in fact aligns well with the research evidence base. And once you've done all of that, upload your Word document, which is your template, electronically to the HSP406 Milo site. Easy. Oh yes, and please use the template. It's very important that you do that, simply because we had so many students who decided in the past, 12 months, to just make up their own critical analysis structure type of thing, and they failed the assignment because they didn't have a few assumptions, they didn't have a strength, they didn't have a weakness. So please, 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 please use the template, and you will make sure that you cover off on all the bits. As per usual, we give you a bit of a structure so that you can follow it. You need an introduction of about 200 words, introduce the topic generally, then talk about what you're going to speak about in each of your different parts of your essay. Then a brief description of the policy or practice or strategy or whatever it is really important. Telling us what the policy is, the purpose of it, the background, how did it come to be. Then you've got your critical analysis of the document or strategy or policy or whatever it is. Read the policy document carefully, and you need to be able to bring the research literature around these different types of documents. So there's three key things that you need to address to do this critical policy analysis. Number one, what key assumptions about policing underpin the policy document? And it's a good idea if you focus on 3 assumptions. That's what it says in the rubric. Giving you a heads up now because many people don't read it and they don't get that message. Number 2, you need to focus on 1 main strength and 1 main weakness, all right? Elaborating these in a paragraph each. Strength, weakness, with evidence in the middle of your paragraphs. If you have a paragraph that lists off a strength and then another strength and another strength and another strength, you're not doing what you need to do, which is elaborating 1 strength and 1 weakness in depth. What are your key recommendations about the future purpose direction of the policy in terms of opportunities and threats? Okay, so we're doing a SWOT analysis with some assumptions thrown in, which is the critical thinking framework. And overall, they capture a really good analysis and that's very strong about what the future of the policy should be. And ultimately, you're making an argument, as I said before, to get rid of it, to keep it, to revise it, depending on what the circumstances are. So once you've answered your 3 questions, then of course you conclude by summarising your main points and what you've found, and you have your list of references. So some general tips. 3rd person is preferred, which means, the author discussed blah, 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 blah. However, if this is your policy and you've had a lot of connection to it, then using 1st person is okay. I talked about this, I did this with the policy. Don't forget the language and style guide. It's really crucial to make sure that your language is clear and simple in this task. Make sure you read the wording of the policy that you're focused on. Think about the key areas of the assignment that you need to address and pull out those things in the wording of the document itself. Make sure you include all parts of the set task, which hopefully will be covered off on with the template. Be sure to include specific examples from the document. Pull out some quotes, not huge, just little ones, to demonstrate the particular assumption, for instance. Include at least 1 reference per paragraph and use the standard essay structure to address the task in terms of introduction, conclusion, body in the middle, which is your critical analysis. I've already flagged the writing and language guide from VicPol. Again, we're trying to focus on this because a lot of people can struggle with this sort of stuff, and the VicPol writing and language guide is very useful for folks when they're trying to articulate things that they need to get across in terms of key messages. What does a marking rubric say? And this is what we mark your assignment with. It says you need a detailed critical discussion of 3 specific underlying assumptions of a Victoria Police policy. Then you need a detailed critical analysis of 1 specific strength and 1 specific weakness of the Victoria Police policy. After that, you need to step into your recommendations about the future purpose, direction in terms of opportunities and threats. But you need to make it specific, not a broad and generalised, I'm not really sure what's going on with this policy, but it's not quite right. All right, make it specific. And of course, we've got some stuff here about communication, addressing the set tasks centrally, clear and concise introduction, same with the conclusion, very fluent writing style, grammar, assignment formatted appropriately using clear paragraphing. 10 or more references used, citation is consistently accurate. All right, so if you do all of those types of things, you'll be getting a really good mark. A reminder about how to structure an essay, making sure you've got an intro, a body, and a conclusion, of course, and that's the basic structure for this task, because you need to be able to have that to make that argument up that that policy is not a good idea and we need to get rid of it, or alternatively that it's great and we need to keep it. So I've given you some example paragraphs. The first one is an assumption paragraph, and this is a very, very clear example of an assumption paragraph. You can see that right up the top of this particular slide, it clearly says the second assumption is that all injuries can be prevented. This utopian style of thinking, blah, 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 blah. And you can see they've elaborated the research evidence in quite a few sentences here, and they've got a lot of references. Now, this is a very high-level example. I'm not expecting everybody to live up to this, but it is a really great example of good signposting and clear writing. And they've got a very clear linking sentence at the end. As a result, this assumption is theoretically possible, yet challenging to achieve or sustain. I've also got an example of an introduction for you that shows you how to summarise your key points and then signpost what your main issues are that you're going to talk about in the essay. Firstly, I will unpack. Secondly, I will draw on. Thirdly, I will analyse how. Then I will examine. That's very clear, simple signposting, which is what we need to see in your introduction. Again, you can do similar things in your conclusion where you're saying, firstly, I discussed. Secondly, I overviewed. Thirdly, I examined. Finally, I explored in the conclusion. And of course, you've got a nice little summary at the end of that about where to from here, what for this policy, what are you arguing, that sort of stuff. Anyway, folks, that's it from me. If you've got any questions at all, please don't hesitate to get in touch with me and we can have a chat. I hope that was helpful and I hope you have a wonderful week. I'll see you soon. Laters!